Hey guys, I wanted to make a quick video. If you are having a grinding slash groaning sound when you turn your wheel, it may start when you are braking and then turning to the left or right. And you're going to feel it a little bit in the wheel. If it is a grinding or groaning sound, it's very likely your power steering pump seal. It's not likely to be an axle. I thought it was my axle, so I did take my wheel off and I did look at it. It seemed to make more noise when I was turning to the left, so I did check it out, and it wasn't the axle in this case. If it is an axle, you will most likely feel a throbbing in the wheel when you turn, and you may also hear a clunking or a clicking that corresponds with the speed of the vehicle. So if you're driving at higher speed and you make a harder turn to the right or the left, you'll feel a kind of a thump, thump, thump feeling in the wheel. This is almost like a grinding feel in the wheel, and I could hear it. So in my case, it's the power steering pump seal. Now, it's the seal between the crank or the camshaft and the power steering pump itself. The seal itself is $11 from Euro Parts, and that's where I got mine, and I had it shipped to my door. It was fast shipping, and the pump itself is on top of the motor. It's not attached to the accessory belt like most vehicles. So I'm going to link to a helpful video that another YouTuber has done just to illustrate where that pump is and where the seal is. It's really easy to get to. The hardest part of the job is actually getting the old seal out. So you're going to need probably a pick tool, a flathead screwdriver, and I'd also recommend, if you can, you need a 19 millimeter, a 13 millimeter, or it's a 13 millimeter and a 19 millimeter. Go ahead and disconnect the hoses from the power steering pump and reservoir, and go ahead and take the pump off the vehicle. It's going to make it a lot easier just to get that seal off, because you're going to need to work at it for a while to get the old one off. Most likely, if it's the original, it's going to be hardened up. The seal as well has an aluminum chassis to it, or an aluminum collar built into it. It's not something you can just poke a tool into it and pry it out. You're going to need to probably use needle nose pliers to actually pry it out. That's going to be the hardest part of the job. Again, it's really easy to get to. It's really easy to remove the pump assembly, but getting that seal out is going to be difficult. So just be prepared to kind of use a sharp edge tool to pry and get in there. Be careful not to nick or damage the area around the seal. The area around the seal is, you want to keep that as smooth as possible. You don't want to cut it or gouge it, because then the new seal is not going to work and you're going to have to put a new pump on the car. So don't do that. Be careful doing that. There's no way to show this. It's just, you've got to just be careful as you can. If you're doubtful of whether you can do this, take it to a shop for sure. But again, I'll link to the part as well as the other video that shows you the location of the pump. And if you're having this issue, this solved my issue. My fluid level, so basically the pump is making a grinding sound because there's loss of fluid somewhere in the system. And unless you're seeing a puddle on the ground, it's going to be that seal between the camshaft and the pump itself. So that means the fluid is getting into the engine. If you haven't seen a lot of fluid get into the engine, in my case, I'm just going to leave it. Hopefully it doesn't damage my car having that fluid in the system. But it's not leaking out of the car, it's leaking into the crankshaft area. So I just changed my oil, so that's one reason why I'm just going to let this go. It's not a lot of fluid, so I'm hoping it doesn't do anything, doesn't damage anything, but it's going to be that seal between the camshaft and the pump assembly. It's about as big as a quarter, and again, it's easy to get to. So if you're not sure, you might wait a little bit longer. I noticed that when I came to a stop and I turned my wheel left and right, that I was hearing a grinding sound. And at that point, I knew for sure it had to be something to do with the pump. It could be the pump itself is failing, and you might need to replace the whole pump. In my case, it's just the seal. But I topped off the fluid, and then I turned the wheel a few more times, and the sound went away immediately. So my fluid was low, and then I knew it was just an issue of loss of fluid somewhere in the system. So if you're getting this sound, first top off the fluid, because you don't want that pump running dry. It's going to damage the pump. And then most likely start with that seal. It's $12. It's worth it to try to replace that and see if that's the issue that's causing the loss of fluid. Again, if you're losing fluid and it's not through the power steering rack or some other leaking hose, it's going to be from that one seal that's getting into the motor. Hope this helps you guys out. Thanks. So here is the location of your power steering pump. You've got these two 13mm nuts, one here and then one down below. You'll want to use a 3/8 inch ratchet and an extension with a universal joint on it, so you can get around this plastic vacuum hose here, but really easy. Just take those two, take this off. This is a 17mm. Unscrew that, remove that. There's going to be a spring behind it. Be careful with that spring, don't lose it. And then there's a 19mm on this hose as well. Take this 19mm off, and then this hose will lift up and away. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4 bolts. Then you'll want to remove this hose from the reservoir, and then you'll be able to remove this whole pump assembly, the pump and the power steering reservoir right here, to get to the seal behind it. The seal is towards the center. It's about right here location wise, and just reverse the assembly process, and then top off your fluid again. Run the vehicle for a few minutes, and then check the fluid level. You're most likely going to need to top it off again. I would definitely recommend putting a rag down here to go ahead and just capture a lot of the fluid. You're going to lose some oil from the crankcase right here, the crankshaft area, and then you're definitely going to lose some of that power steering fluid. The correct fluid is Pentosan CHF or CH 11F, and I'll put a link to that correct fluid. You can usually get it at AutoZone, Advanced Auto Parts, but it's Pentosan 11F is the correct fluid for this vehicle.